We are creatures of habit. Habits don't care if they're good or bad, helping or hurting us. If we've got bad habits, they're going to continue.
Welcome back to Happiness in Progress. I'm your host, Danielle Craig. I'm an Emmy Award-winning journalist, a mom, wife, and you know what I like to say, just a person looking for more joy in the everyday. This podcast is brought to you by the Mail Tribune. You can find more podcasts at mailtribune.com. If you haven't already, go check out Hip Habits, the workbook. In this workbook that I created, there are weekly habits that will last you 6 months. It includes everything from getting your finances in order to getting your physical health in order. You can find that on my website, and I have a link in show notes for you. Speaking of habits, that is what today's episode is about. I talked to Will Moore. He is a serial entrepreneur, happiness expert, and founder of More Momentum. It's a self-improvement movement helping people become the best versions of themselves. I think you're really going to enjoy this episode because we talk about what a failure habit is, what to do if you are stuck in a failure habit that maybe you picked up during the pandemic, drinking alcohol every night, or maybe nightly Doritos. That's exactly what we talk about, how to walk away from that and start getting some more success habits in the mix, and where to start when you want to improve your life, where to start when you want to improve some of the habits that you have going on in your life, that and a whole lot more. So let's get to it. Hi, Will. Thanks so much for coming on the podcast today.
Thank you for having me. Great to be here.
I like that radio voice you threw on for that.
Working on it.
So let's talk about what failure habits are. This is what you talk about: failure habits, success habits. What are failure habits?
So really, it's just, I was just so, like, I've been reading self-help books for the last 25 years. I became addicted when I was suicidal in college. I hit my rock bottom. I was serendipitously turned on to them. And I was like, yes, this is what my brain needs. And I just turned myself into this human science experiment. So thousands of books later, I mean, maybe that's an exaggeration, but probably not too far off when you can include the courses and the audios and the seminars, but they all use good and bad habits. And to me, it just started to become numb. It's like good habits, bad habits. And part of what I talk about in my systems and the way I try to help people is you got to connect to your why. You got to get down all up in to the inside and understand, like, why is this habit not helping me, or why is this habit helping me? And I want to do more of it. And to me, I thought failure and success habits just kind of was a little bit more accurate in terms of, if you keep on this road, it's not just bad, you're going to fail in life. And so to me, it's just the term that I use. And the failure habit is essentially, just like I said, it's anything that you're habitually doing that's causing you to build negative momentum, to head in the wrong direction, to hurt your overall happiness, progress, goals, success in life.
I want to really quickly go back to, you were suicidal in college, because weren't you experiencing success in college? Not then?
Really.
Not then.
No, it came out just out of college. So, well, put it this way. Yes, the second half of college, my freshman year, just quick backstory. Mom was, I was actually born in California, in Pasadena. We moved to Hawaii when I was 2. It's like, oh, poor kid. But my mom was a raging alcoholic. She had a temper. My parents were hippies. My dad, they got divorced when I was 2. And so there was just a lot of kind of tumultuousness, if that's not the right word, but it's Monday and it's early. So.
And that's a word that works. I mean, we all know what you're talking about.
In my early childhood. And then we moved around a lot. My mom was actually an Army brat. My grandfather was a 3-star general. So talk about taking the opposite path. He boycotted the wedding, needless to say. So we moved around a lot. And then we moved to DC, Bethesda, Maryland, to be close to my grandparents at a certain age, when my mom quit drinking and got support from them. And just, I was a complete outsider, a complete outcast. And it was like, okay, I need to figure out how to, by the time I got to college, I was like your typical, I call it a fixed victim. Somebody who's like, I was born with a broken brain. There's nothing I can do about it. Life sucks. I'm just going to try to, like, hold my head just enough above water so that I'm not completely miserable. Right. But it's an awful way to go through life. And so that's kind of where I got to my freshman year of college. But then once I discovered self-help books and kind of started using myself as this human science experiment to become bigger, better, faster, stronger, smarter, taking notes, noting what worked, what didn't, trying different things. By the end of college, I started to come into my own.
Okay. I think that one of the things that self-help books do for people is just grant them the permission to not be the victim anymore. Grant them the permission to take control of their lives.
That's right.
Do you remember the aha moment that you had that you were like, wait, I can be better than this. I have more potential out there.
I do. So that book I was telling you about, it was called, so I was literally in a class. I threw myself into studies because I was, like I said, I actually didn't get into a fraternity, which is like a lot of people will be like, oh, white boy, rich problems. And I get that. But when you're in college and that's like the life that you've gone into, and then every single person in your entire dorm gets into a fraternity and you don't, like, it's like basically like you're a pariah. It's like, oh, what's wrong with that guy? Right. And so I just was like, you know what? And knowing what I know now about human relationships and focusing on other people and putting the attention on them and not making it all about you and being in your own head, it makes total sense why I didn't get into fraternity. But at the time it was like, my life is over. So I threw myself into studies, and I had this Religions of the World course. And this was my favorite professor. He was a young guy. He was hip. He was cool. I was like, I want to be that guy when I grow up. And he just happened to mention that he read this book called How to Win Friends and Influence People when he was younger. And it kind of changed his trajectory. And I like didn't hear a word he said for the rest of the course, ran straight to the library. Luckily they had it. Had they not, I wonder how things would have played out. Devoured it and was like, okay, yes. Like there's a different way to look at the universe than the way I've been looking at it.
That's incredible. My world religions class was also very life-changing for me.
Really?
So, it wasn't world religions for you exactly. It was the professor, but yeah, I love that.
Well, that's a whole nother story. To be honest, that changed my life too. When I learned about all the different, every single religion in humanity around the world, including the smallest tribe in Africa that's never had any outside contact with the world. And I learned that they all had a belief in a higher power. To me, you can't deny that that's innate in us. That's just part of who we are. And I think the reason that we do that is because it's very scary and uncomfortable to go through life thinking when you die, that's it and you're gone. Right.
Yeah,
so we need something to sort of be like, oh no, there's this, and to keep us on the straight and narrow. So I think there's a lot of great things about religion in terms of how the morals and the lessons and leading your life a certain way. But I also think that if religion tries to be pushed on you and forced on you, and ours is right, yours is wrong, it's a very slippery, bad slope to go.
Oh yeah, for sure. And that's what I got from my class was we're all the same. There's no one more right than another. We're not more wrong or more right. And even people who don't practice religion, who just go out on a hike and feel like, elevated in a spiritual sense. So I don't know. We're all the same. Okay.
100,000% right. Right. 100,000% right. I mean, you look at what just happened with the world with Donald Trumpers versus non-Donald Trumpers. And it's not even just, it's conservatives versus Democrat, like around the world, liberals, whatever you want to call it. And there's just literally like 50% of the world hates the other half.
Oh, yeah.
And it's gotten really intense to the point where it's like, you don't believe what I believe. You're not only wrong, you're evil. And it's like, whoa, like we've gone completely backwards. We are all the same. We're all here for the same reason, to be happy.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's get together and make it happen.
Oh my goodness. We could go on and talk about this for a long time, but we're going to go back into habits. We're going to switch back into habits. So I think most of these negative habits or failure habits that people get, they start to get them as they're younger. And at this point, they might be in their 40s, 50s, dealing with these habits they've had for decades. How can someone reroute?
It's a great question. So habits, I look at them as these little creatures with claws, and they dig in deep. And once they're in, they're really hard. It's like a tick. It's like really hard to pull off. It's front loaded work is what I call it. And that it's like, you're going to have to be, the first step is becoming aware. Like that's always first. Like most of us have no idea the failure habits that we're doing, and even the success habits that are helping us. We kind of like just throw those off to the side. Like, I just kind of do that naturally. Right. But so you got to like shine a big old spotlight on your life and say, okay, what is it that's helping me build momentum, helping me grow towards my goals, where I want to be, my overall happiness, and then the opposite. And I have an exercise I do with people where it's called the Back to the Future exercise. I'm a kid of the 80s. So one of my favorite movies. And you basically flash forward at the end of your life and you just go, okay, here's your 5 cores. You get your mindset, your career and your finances, your relationships, your physical health, your emotional health, and giving back. These are the 5 main areas we all share. The whole point in life for me, what I've figured out over these last 25 years is you need to make sure to nurture, continue to build momentum, and balance each of these areas to be your happiest and best self. And so it's like, okay, at the end of my life, where do I want to be? And that just forces you to get rid of all the other BS that's coming at you in a million directions. Before we started this, you and I were just talking about technology and how it's like so hard to keep track these days because there's so much coming at us. And so, yeah, we're an instant generation more than ever. It's hard to just be like, this is what I should focus on. And everything else, just I need to figure out how to ignore. And it's kind of based on universal principles and these books that I've read over the years. And, what I like to say that while life is complex, principles aren't. And even though life's crazy, like there's only a certain amount of principles. And if you live your life around those and continue to build your habits around them, you're going to find yourself in a much better position. And in terms of stopping them, so you become aware, like what are those ones that I really are killing me that I want to be in the future. Then you go back to the present after you look in your future and you say, okay, what habits do I have right now that are not in line with where I want to end up? And those are the ones you start getting to work on and you prioritize, and you just start with one core at a time, because as humans, if we try to overwhelm ourselves, like I was just saying, it's all over.
Yeah. And that's hard because as humans, we also want to be perfect on day one.
That's exactly right. It's in our nature to just say, it's like the New Year's resolutions, right? Like everybody's at the gym on the first week. I'm going to get in shape. And then they come back day one and every muscle's tired and they're like, F this.
I know. Right. I think I read New Year's resolutions are done by like January 13th.
Right. And that is, you just hit the needle in the haystack again, Monday. You hit the something
nail
on the head. Thank you. Nail, not needle. That's exactly right. Humans just want it. They want it now. And especially like I was just saying, we're in an instant generation. People are used to be able to hitting a button and getting whatever the hell they want, including their favorite meal delivered to them. That was the company I used to run. So trust me, I know. Getting delivered themselves in a car anywhere. I mean, it's insane, right? And so discipline has eroded, and it's a lot harder to sort of say, okay, these are the things I really want to do and want in my life. And you got to just take those tiny little baby atomic steps one by one in order to get there. And it's let that law of compounding do its thing.
Mm-hmm. So say somebody they have the awareness, they did the Back to the Future thing, and now they're trying to actually start. It's January 13th. They've done it for 13 days and they're just kind of fallen off their plan. Mm-hmm. How can somebody get back on, remotivate themselves to continue?
So you got to have an accountability system. And that's, to me, that's one of the things that drives me nuts when I hear people on, social media or wherever preaching like, hey, just take these actions. And then you like dive a little bit more into like their system and what they're doing. And they don't really have one. They're just like these rah, rah, rah guys. We are creatures of habit. Habits don't care if they're good or bad, helping or hurting us. If we've got bad habits, they're going to continue. And there's certain factors like the environment. It's figuring out like, okay, how do I make sure that I keep taking this action? Like I said, it's that front-loaded thing. I have I have this system that I use that I help people with. And it's basically just checking in every day in the morning and at night, kind of just saying, hey, these are the things I'm currently working on. How did I do? It's just kind of a light scoring system. And then once a week, you do a little bit more of a deep dive into how did I do in all of my cores and all of the habits this week? Am I moving forward? What do I need to work on? Are there one-time actions I need to take? These types of things. Because if you just leave it to your own devices and willpower, you're dead in the water. Because willpower, there's only so much your brain can go, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. But then if it's presented to you, if it's in your environment and it's right there, you're going to do it. Just like in the Vietnam War, when the vets came back and 15% had gotten addicted to heroin when they were over there. And then when they came back, it was like this huge crisis. Like, oh my God, what are we going to do? And then come to find out, only 1 in 10 that came back kept that habit up. Like the rest just dropped it. And it stopped, it completely killed what everybody thought about drug addiction, which is like, once you're addicted, it's almost impossible to stop. No, it's the environment, right? And so they had over there, they were stressed out. They had easy access to the drugs. Everybody around them was doing the drugs, right? They got back. None of those cues were there. And so it was like, even though maybe at first they had those cravings, once those cravings went away and once they kicked it, that was it and it was done. And so that's kind of the whole point, is like, you want to make sure that you're gamifying your environment. You're tricking your dog brain into wanting to take the actions that are good for you by becoming, first, like I said, aware of what the things are you want to change. And then either making them super visible for the ones that you want to do, like this midnight snack, instead of Doritos and cookies being right there at eye level when you go to the pantry, it's mixed nuts and whatever else it is. And everybody's different. Everybody has different taste buds. But eventually, even though those mixed nuts at first, you're like, this isn't quite as satisfying. Let the law of compounding kick in. Let it 2, 3, 4 weeks. There's no magic time for habits to form. But before you know it, those nuts are going to say it's just as good as those Doritos did, and even better, because you're going to know in the back of your mind, this is actually something that's helping my health. I'm building momentum by eating this, versus that guilty feeling of this is destroying me.
And you probably feel a little better with eating the mixed nuts than the Doritos.
Exactly. Right. More energy, more everything.
Okay. So I have an accountability problem in the way that sometimes I join accountability groups, like at work, they'll be like, let's do this fun accountability thing where we're all going to work out. And I work out every day already, but I'm like, okay, friends, I'll do it. I sign up and I'll do it. And for maybe the first day, and then I'll just stop. I'll just stop the exercising, even though it's something I've done for, years every day. What is that? Is it like a rebel thing?
No, it's called human nature. It's in our nature to expend as little energy as possible. Again, that goes back to prehistoric days. This is thousands of years ago, when, we're living in caves, and it's like, we've got our little clan, and, you want to save your energy for going out hunting, getting the things you need to survive. As we've evolved over the years, and it's, we don't need to go out and kill a saber-toothed tiger in order to live anymore, but our brains haven't caught up to that, in my opinion. And so we're always chasing that, like, how can I do as little as possible? That's, again, this instant generation, like, click, and it's becoming easier and easier for us. And that's a slippery slope. And that's a habit in itself. That's a failure habit in itself. Getting used to just going, boop, boop, I want this, I want this, I want this. And then it's like, wait, you want me to actually get up and run every morning? I don't think so. So my answer to you would be, again, you got to have that accountability system going at all times, like every day. So at the end of the day, you've got your 5 cores, you're grading yourselves. Let's say your number one thing is, all right, I need to get a successful workout routine going, because I just can't seem to stick to one. I can feel my energy going down. I can feel myself, as I'm getting older, starting to get a little heavier, and all these things that come with not taking care of your physical core. And you say, okay, I'm going to commit to myself 3 days a week, and this is what I'm going to do. And having that accountability system to where you have to grade yourself, eventually, as long as you stick to it, if you give up on it and you go, well, I don't, and which is what most people will do. They'll be like, I don't want to do this because it's making me feel bad about myself. You've got to be like, look, this is the only way to do it. And if I don't hold myself accountable every single day, because what's going to end up happening is your brain is going to start going, it's going to catch yourself in the morning. You're like, shit, I don't want to give myself a 1 again today. Like, I want to give myself a 5 for this one. And you're going to actually do it. Right. And it does help to have groups and stuff, like, social pressure, feel guilty, like not being the only one that does it. But in your case, it didn't seem like that worked. I'm building an app for all this. And this is like something I've been working on for the last 3 years. And hopefully in the next couple of months, the beta will come out. And the whole thing that I'm doing is gamifying it, making it fun. So making it addicting to actually hold yourself accountable. There's other habit apps out there, and they drive me nuts because they all feel like homework. I've checked them all out. There's quite a few of them, actually. But to me, when I would go in at night, I just felt like it got to a point where it's like, did this, didn't do this, didn't do this. It didn't divide it into the cores. It wasn't one at a time. It was too overwhelming. It was like, there's like 8 different things I need to do today. And I didn't do any of them. I feel like a piece of, just like I was saying, I don't want to do this anymore. And so the app is going to actually, you're a rocket ship. You've got your 5 cores as the cylinders of your engine. To get off of Earth, to get off of the gravity field of Earth, you have to actually start slowly taking these actions every single day. You check in the morning, you check in at night. Then eventually, you'll build up enough momentum points to get to the moon, then to, Venus and Mars and the next solar system and the next galaxy. And you're meeting aliens along the way that are giving you universal principles and tips. You're also fighting through asteroid fields, little side challenges that you need to work through. And it's just helping. It's on a daily basis using those same dopamine hits and the same stuff like social media, that we get addicted to and we just can't get away from. But ideally, it's using that same science and tech for instead of against you to make you want to take the actions.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. And I love that you can be accountable to yourself instead of to groups, because like anytime I try to do accountability with a group, I'm like, I don't know, guys, I'm not doing it.
Well,
it's
and what you're talking about right now is something that it's part of the awareness process of everybody's built differently. Right. Mm-hmm. And so just like you're like going for a run, I hate running. My wife loves it. She looks for opportunities to run outside if it's nice. Like I'm in Chicago. We finally had like a 20-degree day the other day. And she's like, I'm going for a run. The sun's out. She couldn't wait. Whereas me, I like to do other things for my cardio, basketball, tennis, and so you got to figure out what it is that you have an affinity for, that you don't mind doing, that almost doesn't feel like exercise when you're doing it. Don't just do something because you're like, that's what other people are doing and I feel like I should do it. Figure out what that is. And again, it's gamifying, it's tricking your little dog brain into going, okay, this isn't so bad. And then before you know it, you're in a routine and you're doing it and you're actually on autopilot and your brain's already been like, okay, we got that one. That old failure habit where we were sitting on our butt eating Cheetos is now a success habit where every single Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at this time, we go and we hit balls with whoever, let's say it's tennis, and we're getting our cardio and it's fun. And it's also hitting 2 cores in one. You're getting your relationship core, hanging out with somebody else. So that's, to me, it's figuring out, and it doesn't happen overnight. But again, the more aware you become of yourself, the more you're figuring out, okay, what do I need to use to help reduce the friction about my personality, my values, to make sure that I can build that momentum.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think growing up, we learned that there's like a round spot for all pegs, and we just got to figure out how to get into the round peg spot. Going through elementary school, we got to all be the same. We all got to sit there the same and do the projects the same. But now as adults, I think this is the time where we are like recrafting that and realizing, okay, I'm a square peg and I've got to create that square peg for myself, or else it's going to be really hard to be successful.
That's exactly right. And right. Don't get me started on the schooling system. It's broken, in my opinion, especially the public schooling system. Private schools are getting better, but right. By the time we go through school, it's like, we've learned math, science, but then we even get into things like advanced algebra, advanced chemistry. And you're like, what about how to set a goal? What about my emotional intelligence? What about how to balance my checkbook? What about how to become aware of who I am and use the gifts that I was born with and my natural affinities and passions to help me move forward in life? Where's all that stuff?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're reteaching ourselves right now, hopefully doing a better job for our kids. Okay, so I want to ask about the pandemic specifically. I'm betting a lot of people started to slide backward on their good habits, and maybe they're way steeped in a bad habit now. It's been a year. This bad habit has been a coping mechanism for the whole pandemic. What's your advice there? How to get back on the right path?
So I actually think that some people that I've talked to have been able to develop success habits. So we'll start on a positive note. You're going through life, and as I said earlier, a lot of us have no idea. We're not aware of the things that we're doing that are hurting us. So I think, just for example, I think a habit that the world has had is this 9 to 5, going into work, commuting. I live in a suburb in Chicago. Almost all of my friends commute to work. It takes 2 to 2.5 hours out of their day. When they're at the office, they've said now that they've been out of it, that they're probably half as productive, if not less, when they're in the office, because they're talking to people and they're, shooting shit at the water cooler or whatever. And now it's like you can be at home, spend time with your family, do those things like working out in the middle of the day that you weren't able to do the things to help propel your cores and your habits, your success habits, and then just get that work done in that 3 to 4 hour span. And that was a habit that like the whole world has just been on autopilot for so long. And like, this is just how things are done. And now it's like, whoa, okay, that's broken. And you're starting to see it now. A lot of jobs, even though COVID's coming to an end, hopefully, are saying, you know what, we're permanently removing to remote, and we're doing this and we're doing that. And I think it's a great thing. And so I've talked to people that started getting into their physical a lot more. Like they just literally were going to, because when you go to work and you're there for 10 to 11 hours, the last thing you want to do, especially if you got kids, is come home, put them, hang out with them, put them to bed. And then at like 8 o'clock at night, it's like, okay, now I can work out.
Yeah. Right.
So that's the good side of it. And yes, I think just to call out the elephant in the room, I think that alcohol consumption has probably gone up during COVID for a lot of people, which is obviously a failure habit. Myself included, that one snuck up on me and my wife. Like we found that we'll just, once a night. And then it was like, all right, it was 2 beers a night. And then it was like, we would get together with friends and we were so excited, even though we were, social distance with masks. It was like, pounding drinks. Cause it's like, oh my God, human beings. Right. So, again, this is just an opportunity now as things are, starting to open back up and you're like, okay, the year just started. So if you haven't made your resolutions yet or whatever, you just say, okay, what do I want out of my life? Like, what do I want to be and where do I want to head? And is this habit helping that or is it hurting it? And you just need to put a big old spotlight. And so now that things have changed, if alcohol is one of those things, you say, okay, let's make a commitment. And I don't suggest just trying to go cold turkey. You got to first, again, it comes down to little cues in the environment. So get rid of the booze. If it's like at eye level at your house or somewhere you can see it easily, maybe put it away harder. Maybe if you're drinking 5 days a week, go down to start with 3 days a week and give yourself little mini rewards and say, okay, Tuesday, I didn't have a beer, but I'm going to give myself a little treat or whatever it is. And just kind of, you want to sort of trick your brain into weaning off of the teat of that failure habit. And all of a sudden, you start doing that slowly but surely. To me, that's the best way I've found. And then it's like, not only do you not crave that drink anymore, but you're like, God, how was I ever doing that? Like, but your brain, it's again, the tick. Once that habits don't care if they're good or bad. And when it's bad, it's just stuck to you and it's hurting you and you don't even realize it. But then once you notice it, and it takes a little work to get them off. But then once you pull them off, then that habit that was hurting you, and especially if you can replace it with a success habit, which I always recommend, instead of just getting rid of a failure habit, try to replace it with something else. Cause your brain wants that cue is going to be there. Right. So like you finish your day, you sit down to dinner with the kids. Okay. This is when I have a beer. Okay. What else can you replace that with? Right. Can you replace that with chocolate milk? Just throwing things out. So
yeah, I love that. That's why they tell smokers to get like the sunflower seeds so that they have the action of their hand to their mouth. Because our brains are insane. They're so complex. Okay, I only have 2 more questions for you. Second to last is where should somebody start? Is there should you start with an easier habit or should you specifically start with a mindset habit? What's the best way to set yourself up for success?
So there's a little test that I have. It's like a little quiz on my website. And it's by no means a detailed course to break down your personality, who you are, and get into detail. But it basically asks you 3 questions for each core that I consider to be pretty broadly termed in that it will sort of give you a 10,000 foot view of where you stand in each of these cores. And then you go, okay, and then you look at your scores. Right. And let's say maybe your career and your finance, you're pretty happy with that. You scored a 4 out of 5. But then your physical health, I'm at a 1 out of 5. Right. So to me, the one you're weakest in, that's the one you want to get going on. And in terms of the actual habit that you pick, I would say just I don't think you need to worry about hard versus easy on the surface. Cause again, there's a way to break down the harder ones into easier challenges. But I would start priority wise on what you think is the most important thing within that core that, like if it's a failure habit, for instance, and It's, I'm eating, again, just a simple example. I'm eating Doritos and cookies I get up at midnight, I can't sleep. Throw the Doritos and the cookies away. Like, it's going to be hard, but just do it. And then figure out now, this day and age, there's so many foods that are so good that like have been engineered and taste almost just as good as the bad stuff. Like, find one that meets that same craving, but that's much better for you, and start eating that one. And same with the gym, and same with, proactively with your relationships. Like, are you just hitting the like button for friends that you haven't seen in a while that you really want to connect with? Or are you picking up the phone and actually saying, hey, how you been? What's going on? Are you scheduling, in-person lunches and stuff? Obviously that's been hard with COVID, but now that that's starting to come to an end, like, we need, as humans, we need that interaction and that communication and so on and so forth for each of the cores. And just really, that's it. Just identifying the ones that you're weakest in, and then the top habit that's hurting you in each, and getting going on stopping that. And again, what can you replace it with instead of just stopping?
I love that. I feel like when you get a little distance between you and a bad habit, you gain momentum as well. This podcast is about finding more joy in the good, the bad, and the in-between. What is your number one tip to finding that joy when things are good and when things are bad?
Good question. So to me, I would correlate that to the mindset core, which is arguably the most important of all the cores, even though you just asked me and I said start with whatever you, because the mindset core is one that you've got to get going for you at some point. And it's essentially how you look at yourself, how you look at the world, your perception on life, your attitude, your confidence. Are you a victim in life, like I was saying I was in college, or are you an owner that says, I've got everything within me, I've got strengths, I've got weaknesses, just like everybody else. I'm going to figure out how to outsource my weaknesses and work around them. I'm going to focus on my strengths and my passions and the things that I love. And I'm going to build a life around those things. And then I'm just going to keep taking action every single day, day in, day out. And I'm just going to keep my commitments to myself, because I know that this is the road that's going to take me where I want. And if I fail, I'm going to fail forward, right? I'm not saying jump up and down when you have something bad that happens. It's going to suck still, and just say, you know what, that sucked, but what did I learn? And that's the key difference, right? Is like the mindset going, instead of, life sucks, it's too hard, I can't do this, I can't do that. It's, okay, that was not fun, but what did I get out of it? And how can I use that moving forward to help me achieve where I actually want to go? If you can get that going for you, that's like, everything else is incrementally easier. All your cores become easier to develop. It becomes easier to stop your failure habits, to replace your success habits, because you believe in yourself and you know that like you're going to get there. And just there's something magical about having that your mind working for you instead of against you in the background, versus tons of negative thoughts. That's another failure habit, like talking down to yourself, telling yourself you're stupid. And that's another one of those ones where when you become aware of yourself, you want to be able to catch and go, God, I'm really saying a lot of nasty things to myself. No wonder I'm not making any progress.
Right. Growth mindset is incredible.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on the podcast today.
Thank you, Danielle, so much for having me. This has been great. I appreciate it.
I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Will. Of course, as always, you can find all of his information in show notes, including that assessment he was talking about on his website, including the books we mentioned in this episode. That and a whole lot more, go check out in show notes. And I want to thank you for being here on Happiness and Progress.